Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for choosing Across the Fence. I'm Will Michael in this afternoon for Fran Stoddard. Our focus today is on horses, and for good reason. Horses in Vermont have been synonymous since the pioneer days. We use horses for work and for recreation. The state animal is a horse, and most school kids still learn the story of Justin Morgan and his famous horse figure. In Weybridge, the UVM Morgan Horse Farm attracts tourists from all over the country. It's also a teaching facility for animal and veterinary students. Despite Vermont's historical and modern-day connection to horses, we actually know very little about the significant economic contributions of equines in Vermont. But that is about to change, and today's guests are here to tell us how. I want to welcome Heidi Krantz, who's president of the Vermont Horse Council, and alongside Heidi is Chrissy Rohan, who is a teacher in the Department of Animal and Veterinary Sciences at the University of Vermont. Good afternoon. Thank you both for coming in.
Thanks, Will.
Great to have you here. So what is it that the equine industry wants to know, Heidi?
We are trying to bring up-to-date information about the equine industry. The last information that was gathered was more than a decade ago. And so we started a year ago with some information with a first survey that I think we're going to talk a little bit more about in a little bit. So with this particular survey, we're looking to understand more about the expenses that owners of horses in Vermont incur every year to support their interest and love of horses.
So an economic impact of sorts. For instance, in this program, and I know our audience knows that the dairy industry is worth about $2.2 to $2.6 billion. So
yes.
that's the kind of information you're after?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah? Okay.
Yes, and we have a snapshot of a piece of it from our first half of the survey process, and now we're honing in on the second piece, which is the local impact piece.
Who's involved in this work?
We have, the Vermont Horse Council started the effort as a result of being hosting our Equine Industry Summit, which we've been hosting for 4 years. The very first summit that we hosted back in 2016 asked for people to prioritize the information that they thought was most important to learn, and having an economic impact study was the highest priority that came out of that. There were about 75 attendees at that, all in the equine industry in Vermont. So the Horse Council agreed to take on managing that with a group of partners.
So you have the lead, but that also connects to the university, I understand.
Correct. At that summit, Green Mountain Horse Association talked about an impact study that they completed with the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth. And so since I worked at the university, I thought, well, there must be somebody there that can help us out. So I reached out to the Center for Rural Studies to ask for their support. And we created a committee of equine professionals and organizations, and so we met several times to talk about what we wanted to achieve with this study and who needed to be involved and how to raise money to make it happen.
So Heidi, you've previewed this a bit. We're going to point out that UVM and the Horse Council have worked together, collaborated in the past on a study that looked at the economic impact of horse shows in Vermont. So that work, you said, was done a couple of years ago. What did you learn about looking not at the entire industry, but specifically at shows and some other things, I understand?
Right, so we wanted to focus on that piece because of the potential impact on tourism and understanding how the equine industry can support or does support tourism. So we looked at about 20 events specifically, and we interviewed, what we learned from that was that there were almost 9,000 participants who came into the state of Vermont, or parties I should say, and in those parties the average was 2 people, so really double that number of people coming into the state for events. And from that, about $22 million of economic impact just from those equine events in the state.
$22 million,
yes.
And we know that we know that's just a small slice.
Yes, yes, okay. Absolutely, okay. And that was to some extent is focused in some very specific areas in our state. There's a large show that lasts for 6 weeks in the Manchester area, Manchester Dorset area, and of course Green Mountain Horse Association in Woodstock, South Woodstock, has a huge impact. But we were at the local field days and a lot of smaller events, and so we tried to get a broad spectrum.
Okay. Well, you're now moving into this larger economic survey. You and I spent some time a couple of years ago talking about the initial work. It's not easy to raise this kind of money. It's got to be this is quite the effort. It must be worth it.
Yes. Well, it's taken us, I'd say, 2 years at least to raise the money. And we were fortunate because the College of Agriculture and Life Science came forward to help sort of complete some of that fundraising in order to get this second phase underway.
So do you need additional help now and support financially?
We do. We're about $2,000 short.
Yes.
So we could use a little bit more funds to help with the final payment for this.
Well, we'll do two birds with one stone then, because there is a website and a phone number that we'll get to in just a moment. So not only could people contact you to help support to finish this work, but also to participate in the actual survey. So our director, Adam Wright, will put that on the screen. It's the Vermont Horse, well, there's the Economic Impact Survey, what you're asking folks to participate in. And in order to get to that survey, you're going to go to the vthorsecouncil.org, or you can also call 802-598-4551. Again, the survey is on this website, Heidi, is that
Yes.
right? The vthorsecouncil.org, or if you need to, go ahead and call the number. Folks can send it in. Couple of things to point out. This is an anonymous survey, I understand.
Yes, yes, the information is all anonymous and confidential, although as an incentive, we do have a generous donation from the bunkhouse in Washington has offered a raffle prize. You have to enter that separately so that your information is separate from the answers to your survey. But you could win a night for two plus your horses at the bunkhouse and take advantage of their hospitality and trails.
Can you give us some examples, Heidi? If I'm going to go there, what questions, what is it you're asking? Just some examples of what the survey is about.
So there's a portion of the survey, as you would expect, that's demographic, because we don't have any current information about how many horses there are in Vermont, and we want to gather information about who owns those horses so that we can start to get a good profile of what the people who own horses in Vermont, who they are and what their backgrounds are. And part of that comes from a question that we get often about how many horses are there in Vermont?
Yep.
And nobody really has an answer to that. So we want to get to the bottom of that. And then there's a big section of questions. The bulk of it has to do with expenditures that you incur in taking care of your horses every year. So not just the obvious ones like your vet bills and your feed bills and bedding bills, but questions about, have you purchased a horse trailer this year? Did you put in new fencing? Did you build a new barn? Because all of those are expenses that you wouldn't have incurred if it weren't for having your horses on your property. So we're trying to be able to draw that picture of the broader and wider economic impact.
So how's this going to benefit somebody who's taken the survey? Why should they take the time to do this?
So in a couple of ways, the information that is gathered from this will help us to understand more about the industry, so that, for instance, when the Horse Council is doing the work it does to educate the state agencies or the legislature about issues concerning the equine industry, we have data to share with them that we haven't had to be able to share in the past. But in terms of direct benefit, I think that what we hope will come from it is it will maybe be an incentive to businesses to expand if they see an opportunity. For instance, recently I live up in the Northeast Kingdom. We've had some new veterinarians come into the area because they saw an opening there. So part of what we want to be able to do is to demonstrate that there's opportunity. And I think that the first half of our survey demonstrated great potential for tourism-related opportunities in the equine corner of things, but I think we can look at other opportunities as well.
Chrissy, I imagine once this information, as it becomes available, would help in a research aspect as well, helping shape future research that you or others at the university would be involved in?
Yes, I think so.
In other words, that's another one of the benefits, I guess I was thinking. We were talking about some of the benefits on the government side, some of the research side.
Right.
One of the things you pointed out before we got started was the therapeutic side, and I think we had even a couple of pictures of all the ways that we are literally connected with horses in Vermont.
Right, right.
Yes, and another benefit I think for some of the equine businesses is being able to provide them with some statistical information when they're looking to make decisions about growing their business and need to look for financing. In developing a business plan, there hasn't been a lot of strong information to help with that. So now we're going to be able to support those businesses. I can think of a recent call that I had from someone in the Northeast Kingdom who's looking to build a new facility and is looking for information. And I said, great, if you can hang on a little bit, we'll have some information for you.
And the university is asked questions similar to that as well.
Yep.
Needing the information for business planning, or like the legislators and the various committees at the State House also would like that current information.
Excellent point. Well, before we go, let's put on the screen once again the information to the Equine Economic Survey. It's, again, we've talked about this, is confidential. And just explain, Heidi, all I need to do is go to vthorsecouncil.org. We click on the little logo up in the corner and take the survey.
Yes,
it takes about 20 minutes.
Yeah, there's a link up in the corner, and it takes 20 minutes to a half an hour. We do recommend that you use Chrome or Firefox. That's the feedback we've been getting, is that seems to be the better browsers to use for this particular format. And
if anybody has any questions, they don't have the technology, go ahead and use the phone number, call in.
Yes.
Hey, I can't thank you both enough for coming in. Important information, and please come back and keep us updated once you get the survey information.
Thank you very much, Will.
Thank you.
It is my pleasure. That is our program for today. We know you have choices, so thanks for choosing us. I'm Will Michael, inviting you to join us back here each weekday afternoon for another visit across the fence.